After countless delays, planned reshoots, a corporate takeover, and the year 2020, the New Mutants has actually come out in theaters. So let's talk about it. A group of young mutants are stuck at a hospital while they learn how to control their powers, but things may not be as they seem. So 20th Century Fox originally wanted this movie to come out in April of 2018, over 2 years ago, but they did an early test screening and they actually liked what they saw and wanted to give the director more money to do reshoots to better capture his vision. Well, this was poorly timed because the actors' career started to take off, so they couldn't figure out the scheduling of when to do it. Then 20th Century Fox was acquired by Disney, so they couldn't do the reshoots. And then the year 2020 happened. And the movie just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. The internet, of course, took full advantage of this and made constant jokes about, by the time this movie comes out, they won't be New Mutants, they'll be Old Mutants. But the movie has finally come out in theaters. Before I tell you what I thought about it, let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did it exceed your expectations? Or were you still kind of disappointed by this one? I'd love to hear your take on this one. Also, if you don't know, a couple days ago, my buddy Andy joined me on my channel to kind of give me the comic book history of the New Mutants, know their origins, where they came from, some of the connections that might not be in the film. If you want to know more about the Mutants, you can check out the video right up here after this video, and let's get started talking about the good. And the best thing about this film for me is that it is something different with the very saturated comic book movie genre. It plays a little bit like The Breakfast Club as a horror film set in the X-Men universe. You've got this group of oddballs stuck in a single location that they can't leave, where they have to learn to get along with one another despite their different personalities. But it's also a horror movie. On the horror front, it's a bit of a build up to the third act. At the beginning, it's just kind of strange things are happening. People are having visions. In the second act, it gets more tense, more dangerous. The stakes get higher. And by the third act, mutants are needing to use their powers to battle all the demons that are showing up for various different reasons. But it has some legitimate scares and eerie vibe to it. And to be clear, this plays like a horror film. It doesn't play like a big action spectacle at all. But the glue holding it together is the group dynamic. The individuals are quirky and nuanced, so you're interested in them, want to get to know their backstory, but there's always something about them that makes them entertaining, and the banter in the group leads to a series of solid chuckles throughout the film. Like, you wouldn't say that this is a really funny movie, but it actually has a consistent set of earned jokes based off of the interactions between the characters and their different personalities and how they respond to all this different stuff, as opposed to a bunch of contrived scenarios or forced one-liners. It's all organic and based off the characters themselves and their personalities. Added to that, you have some real standouts here. Anya Taylor-Joy very much steals the show. She's the character that's written to be kind of the most in your face in the way she's dealing with people, and that's always a fun type of character. Likewise, her skill set is kind of flashy, so it works well when you get to the third act of the film. But everyone does a good job. Another thing, I went into the movie pretty nervous because the runtime is only 94 minutes, and that actually felt about right for the size of a film that they were making. There's only like 6 people in the movie and not a bunch of extraneous plot lines and subplots and rabbit trails. It's pretty focused on this group of characters building their relationships with one another and the mystery of this hospital at where they're at. And so even though it is a pretty short runtime for a comic book movie, by the end of it, I wasn't feeling like I got cheated or things were left out. And one final thing that I enjoyed is that the movie is very kind of self-contained, isolated to this single location, but there's a lot of references to the world as a whole and mutants. So it feels like a populated world without overstating it and overdoing it. They're not like trying to elbow you constantly to remind you about specific characters that you know from other movies. Hugh Jackman doesn't show up and go, "Hey guys, looks like we've got some new mutants around here." It doesn't do anything like that. It just lets you know that they are a part of a bigger world in ways that make it feel like a lived-in universe. So I actually had a pretty good time with this film. With that said, let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. And the big one here is that this really is designed to feel like a horror film. It is not an action movie. It's not a big spectacle film. The first half of the movie is all about building tension and scares. There's very little action. And even as you watch the trailers and you see some of the spectacle and their mutant powers, almost all of that is from the last 20 minutes of the film. So you have to go into this with the right expectations. From there, let's move on to the bad. The first thing that comes to mind here is that while I understand the movie wasn't about the spectacle and the action, the whole film is kind of building up our expectations for the payoff in the third act when they really get to use their mutant powers. And when you get to that point in time, it was a little bit underwhelming to me. There were a lot of moments where they would have someone prepare to use their powers. They go towards the thing that they're about to fight, and then it cuts away to someone helping someone on the ground that's hurt, as opposed to really showing the action. It's like the movie was embarrassed about showing mutant powers in this movie about mutants with powers. And so the payoff of the film wasn't as big as I think it could or should have been. Second, it felt to me like I could tell that the movie had been reworked a little bit in editing. Perhaps that's because I went into the movie knowing about its long history of test screenings and plans for reshoots and studio acquisitions, but things seemed like this scene might have made more sense earlier, and there's some continuity issues. Third, some of the rules of this hospital that they're at felt kind of undefined to me. Like, as you're watching the film, you'll be thinking, have they tried this? Has this person done this? Have they tried to communicate with these people? Wait, if they have this technology, why don't they have more information about this, this, and this? There's a bunch of questions that you'll have that are logical questions in light of the scenario that these new mutants are in that the movie doesn't answer and doesn't seem particularly concerned with answering. And I think the movie would have done well to have just a little bit of dialogue explaining better the circumstances that these characters are in. And finally, just in general, there's a certain amount of okayness with the film. It's different, and I appreciate that. A lot of the horror elements do work. There are some solid jokes. I liked the characters, but it's not like the best possible version that this movie could have been. Real quick before I give you my final score, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the New Mutants? Did it exceed your expectations, or were you still pretty disappointed by it? Also, remember, I did that video with my buddy Andy where he kind of explains the comic book origins of the New Mutants. So if you saw the film and want to learn more about who they are, or you haven't seen the film yet and want to kind of go in with some background information, be sure to check out that video. Also, in a couple of days, I'll be doing an updated ranking of the X-Men franchise one final time as we get our final Fox-produced mutant movie. Overall, I had a pretty good time with the New Mutants, and it definitely exceeded my expectations. It's definitely not the most memorable comic book movie of all time, but it is a pleasant addition while bringing in a bunch of horror elements and maybe even a little bit of The Breakfast Club. Overall, I'd give this one a B on the entertainment scale. It's a 7.5, but this is a movie that you can probably wait to stream. Remember to check out that video right over there where my buddy explains who the New Mutants are in the comic books, and be sure to come back in a couple of days to see that updated ranking, see where I've put this one with the other X-Men films. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.